Okay, so now I have to clean up after that, right? Those were three outstanding. I guess the bases are loaded, these were three outstanding and provocative and thoughtful talks about the Civil War, Reconstruction, and the memory of them. They're also, all three of them are deep reflections about a timeless debate about fate versus free will, destiny versus choice and chance, and the historian's dilemma constantly, the debate between inevitability and contingency. All historians struggle with these questions. It's an occupational hazard. Was the Civil War the result of blundering extremists, an avoidable disaster? A generation of historians thought so in the first half of the 20th century. And now, was the Civil War the irrepressible conflict between two fundamentally opposed, fundamentally conflicting moralities on an inalterable collision course? That is now more the conventional wisdom of historians, but like all conventional wisdom, it's only conventional for a certain amount of time. It all should be questioned. And with those questions, I'm going to go in reverse order back in time, starting with David Blight and Robert Penn Warren. Warren, in Blight's fine telling, we find an American Clio. Clio was the muse of history, and that certainly was Robert Penn Warren. We also hear from the depiction of this moral dilemma that Robert Penn Warren engaged with in talking about the Civil War, a border state mentality, Blight says, but also perhaps a borderline personality, also that you can find in border states. He wrote stirring poetry about the dilemma. It's just a few more passages that I thought were very moving, or at least and very deep about this problem that we see in Blight's work, pulling these passages from Robert Penn Warren on this question. One is, the first I'll start with is this passage. The world is like an enormous spider web, and if you touch it, however lightly, at any point, the vibration ripples to the remotest perimeter, and the drowsy spider feels the tingle and is drowsy no more, but springs out to fling the gossamer coils about you who have touched the web and then inject the black, numbing poison under your hide. It does not matter whether or not you meant to brush the web of things. Your happy foot or your gay wing may have brushed it ever so lightly. But what happens always happens, and there is always the spider, bearded black and with the great faceted eyes, glittering like mirrors in the sun, or like God's eye and the fangs dripping. Here, this is a metaphor about contingency and chance, I think, about the interconnection. Any change you make in the world will influence everyone around you. That touch of the spider web, we're all interconnected in this web, and one small change changes the web for everyone else. So on the one hand, we have a meditation on contingency. But on the other hand, in this borderline personality and this back and forth of contingency versus destiny, we have another passage from Warren. Do you know what history is? It is the agony people have to go through so that things will turn out as they would have turned out anyway. God is tired of taking the blame. He is going to let history take the blame for a while. That comes from Robert Penn Warren's book that David Blight talks about, Wilderness, both a great name for a Civil War battle, the Battle of the Wilderness. What an evocative name for a battle and wandering through the wilderness. But it's also a metaphor for the wandering during the War of all Americans and all Americans since then trying to navigate through the wilderness. All right, two other passages about history. Can we in fact learn only that we are victims of nature and of history, or can we learn that we can make, or at least have a hand in the making of our future? This is the dilemma of contingency versus destiny again. Finally, I think another moving poem that ends the chapter that Blight has provided with us. Truth is what you cannot tell. Truth is for the grave. Truth is the downy feather you blow from your lips to shine in sunlight. Truth is the trick that history over and over again plays on us. Its shape is unclear in shadow or brightness, and its utterance the whisper we strive to catch. Truth is the curse laid upon us in the garden, capital G, and is the sun-stung dust devil that swirls on the lee side of God when he drowses. So there's a lot in that poem, but one thing that I think emerges from those words is that truth in Warren's mind can be good like an angel's downy feather or evil like a dust devil. But in either idea of the feather or the dust devil, truth is fleeting and it's weak, and it's a trick that history plays on us. as we navigate through the wilderness. So with those ideas of contingency and destiny, Robert Penn Warren tried to navigate those two lines himself. Inevitability has been used ever since the Civil War as part of a moral battle of history over the memory of the war. Warren wrote that the North's inevitability theory allowed them to think that the North had been the, quote, bright surgical instrument in the hand of God or of history. And on the flip side, Blight tells us about Warren, is that the South's inevitability theory allowed them to believe in the noble lost cause and its honor, which Warren called the great alibi. Warren had his own theory of inevitability, but it looked more to the human condition generally rather than picking out one side or the other. He believed that humans are too inevitably flawed and sinful, and we should not have expected so much from them. Blight writes that Warren was criticized for giving the South such a free pass, but I don't think that's the point that Blight is drawing from Warren. He's showing that Warren, as the muse of American history, he was writing about America's tragedy, with tragic choices and fate on both sides of the war.